Hi everyone. Welcome to English Story School, where every story unlocks the magic of English. Get ready to learn and transform your language skills one tale at a time. Chapter 1. The Question That Changed a Nation. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You're locked away in a cramped prison cell, barely big enough to stretch your arms. The walls are cold, unyielding, and silence becomes your only companion. For 27 years, you endure this isolation, not because you committed a crime, but because you stood against injustice. Imagine walking out of that prison. Do you let the bitterness consume you, or do you choose the unimaginable, forgiveness? This was the profound crossroad Nelson Mandela faced, and his choice would ripple across history. Nelson Mandela's journey began far from the towering cityscapes of modern South Africa. He was born amidst the rolling hills of Transkei, a region rich in tradition and culture, but overshadowed by the harsh realities of apartheid. As a young boy, Mandela's life was simple, yet the seeds of greatness were already being sown. The elders of his village often shared tales of bravery, justice, and unity around the fire, and these stories left an indelible mark on him. From a young age, Mandela's heart beat for fairness, and his eyes gleamed with a vision for a world where equality wasn't just a dream, but a reality. But life in South Africa was anything but fair. The oppressive system of apartheid divided the nation, reducing the majority to second-class citizens in their own land. Mandela's education and his innate sense of justice sharpened his resolve to fight this injustice. He wasn't just a man of words. He was a man of action, standing at the forefront of the struggle for freedom. Yet his unwavering commitment came at a steep price. Arrested, tried, and sentenced to life imprisonment, Mandela's fight for equality seemed to end within the stifling confines of Robben Island. Now let's go back to that pivotal moment, his release. Mandela's story could have taken a different turn. After 27 years of grueling hardship, it would have been understandable for him to carry anger like a badge of honor, to seek vengeance against those who had wronged him and his people. But Mandela didn't walk that path. Instead, he made a choice that would redefine not just his legacy, but the destiny of an entire nation. Forgiveness. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing to rise above it. For Mandela, forgiveness wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a demonstration of strength. It was a strategy to unify a fractured South Africa, to heal wounds that ran deep, and to inspire hope where despair once reigned. Mandela's capacity to forgive became his superpower. It allowed him to transcend the pain of his past and emerge not just as a leader, but as a symbol of what humanity can achieve when love triumphs over hate. His decision didn't just free him from the chains of anger. It set an entire nation on a path toward reconciliation and renewal. This extraordinary act, choosing forgiveness over vengeance, is what transformed Nelson Mandela into more than a man. He became a beacon, a light that pierced through the darkest corners of apartheid, showing the world that forgiveness is not just an act, it is a revolution. Chapter 2. The Years of Darkness. In 1964, the world watched as Nelson Mandela, a man who had become the face of resistance against apartheid, was sentenced to life imprisonment. His crime? Fighting for equality in a nation that sought to strip it away. His new home? Robben Island, a remote and desolate prison surrounded by the relentless waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The island was more than just a prison. It was a place designed to break the human spirit, a fortress where hope came to die. Yet, for Mandela, it became something else entirely, a crucible where his indomitable spirit was forged. Picture Robben Island. Winds howl through barren landscapes, carrying with them a chilling reminder of isolation. The cells are small, barely large enough to stretch your arms. By day, prisoners are subjected to grueling labor, breaking rocks under the unrelenting sun. By night, the cold seeps into their bones as they lay on thin mats, the sounds of the ocean mocking their captivity. This was Mandela's life for 27 years. It's easy to imagine despair taking root in such a place, but Mandela was no ordinary man. Instead of allowing the darkness to consume him, Mandela used this time as an opportunity. His cell became a classroom. He devoured books, taught fellow inmates, and even debated politics with his jailers. Every stone he chipped away in the limestone quarry was a metaphor for the walls of apartheid he dreamed of dismantling. It wasn't just physical labor, it was mental preparation for the future. Mandela once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." These words weren't just philosophical musings. They were the bedrock of his survival strategy. Forgiveness became his greatest weapon. It wasn't born out of naivety or weakness, but out of a profound understanding of what was needed to unite a fractured nation. Mandela recognized that anger and bitterness would only perpetuate the cycle of hate. If South Africa was to rise from the ashes of apartheid, it needed a leader who could see beyond the pain and envision a path to reconciliation. Forgiveness was not about absolving the oppressors, but about liberating himself and others from the chains of resentment. Mandela's years on Robben Island were not wasted years. They were transformative. He emerged not broken but stronger, his vision for a free South Africa sharper than ever. He learned patience, resilience, and the art of turning personal suffering into a source of strength. It's astonishing to think that the man who walked out of that prison in 1990 with a smile and an open hand had endured nearly 3 decades of captivity. The years of darkness on Robben Island could have extinguished Mandela's hope. Instead, they became the foundation for his extraordinary journey from prisoner to president, from a symbol of resistance to a symbol of forgiveness. His story reminds us that even in the bleakest circumstances, the human spirit has the power to find light, purpose, and the strength to forgive. Chapter 3. The Turning Point. Fast forward to 1990. Imagine the scene. The gates of Victor Verster prison swing open, and a man walks out. Nelson Mandela. The world holds its breath. Cameras flash, crowds cheer, and the air is electric with anticipation. After 27 years of imprisonment, Mandela steps into the sunlight, not as a broken man, but as a symbol of hope. What would he say? What would he do? Many feared vengeance, an unleashing of bitterness stored up over nearly 3 decades. Instead, Mandela does something extraordinary. He chooses forgiveness. Pause for a moment to reflect on the gravity of that decision. Here was a man who had every reason to be angry, every justification to demand retribution. He had been torn from his family, stripped of his freedom, and forced to endure unimaginable hardship. Yet, as Mandela walked free, his heart was not filled with anger. It was filled with purpose. With a steady smile and an open hand, he extended forgiveness, not just to his oppressors, but to an entire nation. This single act of grace was not just personal, it was profoundly political. Mandela understood something many leaders struggle to grasp. Forgiveness is not a weakness, it is a strength. His decision to forgive wasn't about erasing the past, but about building a future. South Africa was a country fractured by decades of apartheid, its people divided by walls of mistrust and hatred. Mandela knew that unity would not come from vengeance, but from reconciliation. His forgiveness became a call to action, a powerful declaration that the cycle of hate and revenge must end. The cornerstone of this vision was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, a groundbreaking initiative that allowed the nation to confront its painful past. The TRC wasn't about sweeping atrocities under the rug. It was about bringing them into the light. Victims shared their stories, their pain, their loss, their humanity. Perpetrators, too, were given a voice. They confessed their crimes, sought forgiveness, and faced the truth of their actions. This process was not easy. It was raw, emotional, and often heartbreaking. But it was necessary. It was a way for the nation to heal, to grieve, and to begin the arduous journey toward unity. Think about the courage it took to make this happen. Imagine sitting across from someone who had wronged you deeply, listening to their confession, and finding the strength to forgive. Mandela's vision for South Africa wasn't about forgetting the past, but about refusing to let the past dictate the future. He once said, "Courageous people do not fear forgiving for the sake of peace." These words became a guiding principle for a nation standing on the precipice of change. Mandela's forgiveness wasn't symbolic. It was transformative. It set the tone for his presidency, where he consistently chose reconciliation over retaliation. One of the most iconic moments of this era was his support for the South African rugby team during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Once a symbol of apartheid, rugby became a symbol of unity as Mandela donned the Springbok jersey and cheered alongside a nation that was learning to heal. The turning point of Mandela's life was not just his release from prison. It was his decision to rise above personal pain for the greater good. His choice to forgive inspired a nation to find its humanity and showed the world that forgiveness is not just an act of grace, but a revolutionary tool for change. Through his actions, Mandela taught us that true leadership is rooted in compassion, and that even the deepest wounds can lead to the greatest transformations. Chapter 4. The Ripple Effect of Forgiveness. Nelson Mandela's acts of forgiveness didn't just stop at healing South Africa. They sent ripples of hope and inspiration across the entire globe. His forgiveness was not confined to speeches or symbolic gestures. It was woven into his every action as a leader, proving to the world that forgiveness is not only possible, but profoundly transformative. Let's start with the unthinkable, inviting his former jailers to his presidential inauguration. Imagine this. After spending 27 years behind bars, Mandela looked at the very people who had enforced his imprisonment and said, "Come, join me on this historic day." This wasn't merely an olive branch. It was a bold declaration that the cycle of resentment and vengeance could end. To Mandela, their presence wasn't about erasing the past. It was about forging a future where former enemies could stand side by side. This act set a powerful tone for his presidency, demonstrating that leadership isn't about dwelling on wounds but about healing them. Then came another unforgettable moment, the 1995 Rugby World Cup. At the time, rugby was a divisive symbol in South Africa. For many, it represented the exclusivity of the apartheid regime, a sport dominated by the white minority. Mandela, however, saw an opportunity where others saw division. In an iconic gesture, he donned the green and gold jersey of the Springboks, South Africa's rugby team, during the final match. Standing in the stadium, he smiled and cheered for the team that had once been a symbol of oppression to many in the black community. The effect was electric. The crowd erupted in chants of Nelson. Nelson, as the image of Mandela in the Springbok jersey, was beamed across the globe. This wasn't just a sporting event. It was a moment of national unity. By embracing the Springboks, Mandela showed that symbols of division could be transformed into symbols of togetherness. It was a masterstroke of leadership that brought South Africans of all races together, even if just for a moment, under the banner of shared pride and hope. These acts weren't just gestures. They were transformative tools for change. Mandela's forgiveness proved that peace isn't about forgetting the past or pretending it didn't happen. Instead, peace is about acknowledging the pain, learning from it, and deciding to move forward together. His actions inspired countless other nations and leaders to rethink conflict resolution. From truth commissions in other post-conflict countries to global movements for reconciliation, Mandela's approach became a blueprint for healing fractured societies. Think about the courage it took to lead in this way. Forgiveness isn't easy, especially when the wounds are deep. Yet Mandela's life teaches us that forgiveness is a superpower. It doesn't erase history, but it builds a bridge to something greater, a shared future where understanding replaces hatred and hope triumphs over despair. Mandela's story is proof that one person's choice to forgive can inspire millions. His journey reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable pain, we have the power to choose unity over division and love over fear. His acts of forgiveness created ripples that continue to influence the world today, showing us that the path to peace is paved not with retribution, but with reconciliation. Chapter 5: The Legacy We Inherit. Nelson Mandela's legacy is far more than a chapter in history books. It's a living, breathing testament to the boundless potential of the human spirit. His story isn't confined to the annals of South African politics or global diplomacy. It's a universal guide, a lesson that transcends borders, cultures, and generations. Mandela's life wasn't just about leading a nation out of the darkness of apartheid. It was about leading humanity toward a brighter, kinder, and more compassionate version of itself. His vision wasn't just political. It was profoundly moral, rooted in the belief that humanity's greatest power lies in its capacity to forgive, to love, and to heal. At the core of Mandela's legacy is the idea that forgiveness isn't a singular act or a fleeting moment of grace. It's a way of life, a commitment to constantly choosing understanding over resentment, reconciliation over revenge. Think about that for a moment. In a world often driven by the impulse to retaliate, to fight fire with fire, Mandela's philosophy challenges us to rise above our pain. It's not about ignoring our wounds, but about refusing to let those wounds define us. Forgiveness, as Mandela practiced it, is the ultimate act of courage. It's about mending what is broken, whether it's a relationship, a community, or an entire nation. Mandela didn't just talk about building bridges, he showed us how to do it. Where others saw insurmountable walls, walls of race, class, and history, he saw opportunities to connect, to unite, and to heal. His approach wasn't naive optimism. It was a carefully considered strategy. Mandela understood that holding on to anger and division only perpetuates the cycles of hatred and violence. He once said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." The same could be said of forgiveness. It's not the absence of hurt, but the triumph over it. Consider the extraordinary symbolism of his acts. Inviting his former jailers to his inauguration wasn't just a gesture. It was a message to the world. It said, "We cannot change the past, but we can shape the future." Wearing the Springbok jersey during the Rugby World Cup wasn't just about sports. It was about rewriting a narrative of division into a story of unity. These acts weren't just political strategies. They were moral victories, proof that even in the face of profound injustice, humanity has the power to choose a better path. Mandela's legacy is a philosophy, a challenge, and a gift. It calls us to examine our own lives and ask, where can I build a bridge? Who can I forgive? What walls have I built that need to come down? His life reminds us that forgiveness isn't about condoning the wrongs of the past. It's about reclaiming our future, about refusing to let anger and bitterness hold us back from what's possible. As we reflect on Mandela's legacy, we're reminded that he wasn't a flawless man. He was human, with doubts, fears, and struggles like the rest of us. What made him extraordinary was his ability to rise above those struggles, to embody the values he believed in even when it was difficult. His life is proof that forgiveness isn't just for saints and heroes. It's for all of us, ordinary people with extraordinary potential to create a more compassionate and united world. Mandela's lesson is clear. Forgiveness isn't just about healing others. It's about healing ourselves. It's about unshackling our hearts from the chains of anger and opening the door to joy, hope, and possibility. His legacy isn't just something to admire. It's something to live by. Imagine, for a moment, a world where forgiveness isn't just a rare act of grace, but a universal way of life. Picture a society where people choose understanding over resentment, where conflicts dissolve not through force but through compassion, and where the wounds of the past serve as stepping stones to a brighter future. That's the world Nelson Mandela envisioned, and more importantly, that's the world he worked tirelessly to build. His life was more than just a series of inspiring moments. It was a carefully crafted blueprint for achieving this vision of forgiveness. Mandela understood that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the pain or pretending the hurt never happened. The scars of the past remain, visible and real. But those scars don't have to define us. Instead, they become powerful symbols of how far we've come and what we've overcome. Mandela's journey reminds us that every scar holds a story, not of defeat, but of resilience. It's a story of choosing to heal rather than hurt, to build rather than break, and to love rather than hate. His life invites each of us to turn inward and ask ourselves difficult, transformative questions. How can I bring forgiveness into my own life? Who am I holding grudges against? And how are those grudges weighing me down? These questions aren't easy, but they are necessary. Mandela's story teaches us that holding on to anger and resentment is like carrying a heavy stone. The longer we hold it, the heavier it feels. But when we let go, we free ourselves to embrace something far greater: peace, joy, and possibility. Think about the space that forgiveness creates in our lives. When we let go of anger, we open ourselves to love, understanding, and connection. Imagine repairing a fractured friendship or reconciling with a family member after years of silence. The act of forgiveness doesn't just heal relationships, it transforms them. Mandela's life is a shining example of this truth. He forgave those who had wronged him not just for their sake, but for his own freedom and the freedom of his nation. Forgiveness is, at its heart, a revolutionary act. It defies the instinct to retaliate and chooses instead to rebuild. Mandela's vision challenges us to see forgiveness not as a weakness, but as a profound strength. It's a way of taking control of our narrative, of saying, I will not let the actions of others dictate my future. When we forgive, we reclaim our power and create space for something greater to enter our lives. So, as you think about Mandela's legacy, ask yourself, what would your life look like if forgiveness became your norm? What grudges could you release? What relationships could you mend? And how might letting go of anger open the door to new possibilities? Mandela's journey shows us that forgiveness isn't just a gift to others, it's a gift to ourselves. It's an invitation to live lighter, to love deeper, and to walk forward with hope and purpose. Take a moment to truly reflect. Think about someone in your life with whom you've drifted apart. Perhaps it was a dear friend, a family member, or even a colleague. The relationship, once filled with warmth and connection, now feels strained, maybe because of a misunderstanding, an unspoken hurt, or words said in anger. How often do we carry these fractured connections like invisible weights? Nelson Mandela's story reminds us of a powerful truth. Reaching out doesn't just heal the other person, it heals us too. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's not about pretending the hurt didn't cut deep or that the words didn't sting. Forgiveness is about something far more profound. It's about choosing freedom over resentment. Imagine carrying a heavy stone in your heart. At first, you might barely notice its weight, but over time, it grows heavier and heavier, slowing you down, sapping your energy, and making joy feel just out of reach. That's what holding on to anger feels like, a burden that we carry, often without realizing how much it's weighing us down. Mandela often said, "When we forgive, we free ourselves." These words weren't just an ideal. They were his lived experience. After 27 years in prison, Mandela had every reason to carry the stone of anger. Yet he chose to set it down. He understood that forgiveness wasn't a gift to his oppressors. It was a gift to himself. By letting go of resentment, he reclaimed his energy, his focus, and his ability to lead with clarity and compassion. Think about what it means to set that stone down. Picture yourself releasing the weight, feeling your chest lighten and your steps become easier. Forgiveness is liberating. It doesn't erase the past, but it reshapes how we carry it. Instead of dragging the hurt with us, we transform it into a lesson, a stepping stone that helps us move forward. Now, imagine the possibilities that forgiveness opens up. When you let go of anger, you make space for something greater, understanding, connection, and even love. Reaching out to someone you've drifted from can feel daunting. What if they don't respond? What if the hurt is too deep? But Mandela's story teaches us that the act of reaching out is powerful in itself. It's a declaration that you refuse to be defined by anger, that you choose growth over stagnation, and hope over bitterness. So, who is that person in your life? Maybe it's a friend you haven't spoken to in years, a sibling you've grown distant from, or a colleague you had a falling out with. What would it feel like to make the first move, to extend a hand, to say, "Let's talk"? Forgiveness isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's simply about releasing the hold that anger has over you. It's about setting down the stone and walking forward, not weighed down but free. Mandela's story isn't just about grand gestures of forgiveness. It's about the everyday choices we make to let go, to heal, and to move forward. In forgiving others, we give ourselves the greatest gift, the freedom to live fully and joyfully. So take that moment, reflect, and then, if you're ready, take the first step towards setting yourself free. Mandela's life is a profound reminder that forgiveness is more than a personal act. It is a catalyst for collective healing. His journey compels us to think beyond individual grievances and consider how societies, like individuals, can confront their pain and move toward reconciliation. Mandela didn't forgive just for his own peace of mind. He forgave for the soul of a nation. His forgiveness became the foundation upon which South Africa could begin to rebuild, a divided country trying to find its way to unity. At the heart of this transformation was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, a groundbreaking initiative Mandela championed. The TRC wasn't about ignoring the horrors of apartheid or brushing the pain under the rug. It was about creating a space where those wounds could be acknowledged, a space where victims could share their stories and perpetrators could confront the consequences of their actions. Imagine the bravery it takes to stand before someone who has wronged you deeply, or to admit to deeds that caused immense suffering. The TRC wasn't perfect, but it was revolutionary. It demonstrated that healing begins when we face the truth, no matter how painful, and choose reconciliation over retaliation. Mandela's approach to forgiveness didn't come from weakness. It came from immense courage. Think about what it takes to let go of anger that feels so justified, to release the desire for revenge that seems so natural. Forgiveness is not an easy choice, but Mandela's life shows us that it is a powerful one. When he emerged from 27 years of imprisonment, he could have used his newfound freedom to seek retribution. No one would have blamed him for it. But instead, he chose a vision for a brighter future. By letting go of bitterness, he set an example not just for South Africa, but for the entire world. His legacy challenges each of us to embody the spirit of forgiveness in our daily lives. It starts with a simple question: what grudges are you holding on to? Is there someone in your life, a friend, a family member, or even yourself, that you need to forgive? Sometimes forgiveness can be as straightforward as picking up the phone and reconnecting with someone you've drifted apart from. Other times, it's about letting go of an old resentment that has weighed you down for far too long. Mandela's story teaches us that forgiveness is not about forgetting the hurt. It's about choosing freedom, freedom from the chains of anger and the burdens of the past. The act of forgiveness opens doors to possibilities we never imagined. It allows us to find joy in places we thought were lost and to rebuild connections we thought were broken forever. Mandela's life shows us that forgiveness can transform not just individuals, but entire nations. His courage and vision continue to inspire countries grappling with division, proving that no matter how deep the wounds, unity is possible when forgiveness is embraced. Nelson Mandela's legacy is more than a historical milestone. It is a living, breathing guide for how we can create a better world. It is a beacon of hope, a call to action urging us to make forgiveness a part of our everyday lives. By practicing forgiveness, we don't just honor Mandela's memory. We become part of his legacy. Each act of forgiveness, no matter how small, contributes to a ripple effect that has the power to change the world. So, let us carry his lessons forward, making forgiveness not an occasional gesture, but a daily practice, one that lights the way for others and shapes a future built on compassion, understanding, and unity. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.